Hi everyone, Jackie here. So it's week 14. It's the end of the semester. I know a lot of you are overwhelmed. Even in regular semesters, students are always overwhelmed at the end of the semester, and then the winter semester is always a bit worse because you're at the end of an academic year. And this year has been extremely challenging for a lot of people. So you're overwhelmed, you're panicking. I know a lot of you feel like you're about to drown. You feel like there's no end in sight. Welcome to the club. And I'm not saying that to trivialize what you're all going through. It's more to help you understand that, most of your peers and your teachers too, we're all in the same boat. This is kind of the academic lifestyle, and it doesn't, again, saying that doesn't make it easier, but it helps you know. Well, some people find it helpful to know that they're not alone, and even though a lot of your teachers, maybe some of us, we look like we've got all our shit together, we're all stressed and panicking too. It's hard on everybody. Okay. So I thought I'd put together some tips to stop, drop, and roll, because maybe you remember, I don't know if they still do this. When I was a kid, little kid, for fire drills, and you'd have firefighters come to the school and talk about fire safety and stuff like that. One of the things they would say would be, if you are on fire, you managed to get out of the house, but you caught on fire, your clothing, your hair, whatever, you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Don't run around screaming and flailing. That's panicking. And just like if you are drowning, right, you might know this as well, that's the worst thing you could do is panic. So if you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. You think you're drowning, stop panicking, get yourself floating on your back. Just sometimes calming down, it might seem counterintuitive, but it's the best thing you can do for yourself. So here are some tips specifically about what you're going through. None of this is about fire or drowning. I like to say stop, drop, and roll. So here's a kind of a step-by-step thing, and I could add a lot more to this, but I wanted to keep it somewhat simple, and there's already like some points, sub-points, and stuff like that, but maybe this can help some of you. And some of this stuff is from older tips, so I don't know if you have been following some of the tips of the week, you might recognize some of these things. And if you've been following some of my older tips about being organized, maybe some of this is like, oh yeah, okay, I've already started doing this and whatever, and Jackie's tips didn't completely work, but I tweaked it, and whatever, great, right? But it's never too late. Even now, you can at least, if you've been disorganized all semester, which a lot of students and teachers are, just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, and I was like that for a long time, and it still happens, but for the most part I've reduced a lot of my stress by being organized. But it's not too late. End of semester, you can still put some things in place that will help these last few weeks. And I say few weeks because I know there are 2 weeks left of the semester, but some of you have exams after that, and some of you are going straight into summer school. All right. So the first thing I recommend you do is, yes, it's taking time away from actually working on your work, but trust me, this will help, okay? Take 10-15 minutes right now, like even, before you go to bed, if you're watching this at night, or, in between two classes or whatever, take 10 to 15 minutes. It might take you a bit less, it might take you a bit more, but this 10-ish minutes should be enough. Just make a list of all the assignments and exams that you have from now until the end of term. And, you can do this by looking at I know your teachers are all using different platforms, Teams, Leia, whatever. Just go into whatever your teacher's using for whatever course, and just, if you're manual like me, you like to have physical lists, get a pad of paper and just write a list, okay? All the assignments, exams that you have from now until the end, including finals and things like that during the exam period, and of course with the due dates and what the things are. So, anthropology essay, sociology essay, psychology final exam, and first start by putting all these due dates and exam dates as well in your calendar. If you haven't done that yet, that's something normally you should do at the beginning of the semester, and you have it all for the whole semester. Of course, sometimes they change, but at least you can just change them after. But if you haven't yet, do that now for what you have left, okay? So you'll see it. Then what I suggest you do, and you can do this, you can take a you can take, say, probably 2 hours to do everything that's in this document, maybe even less, maybe 1 hour might be enough, or you can kind of split it up over the next few days. But what you'll do next is for each of those assignments and exams that you plugged into your calendar, you'll take maybe just 10 minutes per assignment or exam and carefully read over any instructions you were given or any information that you have about it, right? So maybe for a final exam there might not be instructions, but the teacher might at least have told you, well, this is on the whole semester, or this is only on, everything since the break, or only, whatever weeks. They might have given you a list of topics, right? So just look over whatever information you have, right? So for example, for our course, those of you in my intro classes, you have, just last Friday, you got your instructions for the final. Those of you native peoples, you've had them for a while, and we've been talking about it, and you've been working on it in your weekly stuff, right? So you're going to carefully look over those things. I know I bug people a lot, but it is important, okay, to look at this in advance, mostly for your teacher's sanity, because if you wait until the day before and you write us at like 3 in the morning before it's due, we can't help you, right? And it's annoying. It's like, what? So make a list of all the different steps you need to go, and this is for each one, right? So you're taking 10 minutes for each essay or exam to look at what you have, what information you have, and make a list of what you're going to need to do to finish that specific thing. So for example, say you're reading the instructions for an essay in my class, whichever one you're in, you have an essay due in a couple of weeks. So what are the different steps you need to get through to finish, right? What's your end result? Okay, what do I need to do to get there? Okay, so for this thing, okay, I'm going to need to read chapters, X, Y, Z, these chapters, because in my intro course, all based on the textbook. If you happen to, you're looking at stuff for an exam, you might need to review your notes because, those are the weeks. So you don't want to wait to cram, when you cram the day before, you might do okay, but you could do so much better if you're studying in the weeks leading up to the exam. If it's a research project, you need to find sources. Well, you need to find sources, and then you're going to need to read the sources, and there are other steps. I haven't listed them all, right? But you find the sources not the day before you write the paper, because you're going to need to read the sources and take notes on them and think about them before you write about them, right? So just all those things. Maybe you're the type of person who likes to create an outline, or and then of course writing the paper itself, or just these are again examples, right? So think carefully about all the things you're going to need to do and write them all down for each paper. So you have, say, one sheet, for example, anthropology essay, and then another sheet, psychology exam, and then you're going to have a list of all the things you need to do. And for each of those steps that you wrote down, then you're going to come up with a realistic assessment of how much time it will take you. And we're all very bad. We're all like, oh, this will take me like a half hour. Give yourself more time than you think you need, okay? And trust me, you will feel much better later on when you realize, oh yeah, this is taking me more time. It's a good thing I didn't just give myself a half hour, because this is actually taking me 2 hours, right? And if I would have only given myself a half hour, then I'd be scrambling for everything else. Give yourself more time than you need when you write next to each step how long you think it's going to take. Trust me on this, okay? I have a lot of gray hair that comes with the experience of not doing this sort of thing. So then you're going to want to prioritize not the assignments and exams, but the steps, because maybe you have something that is due before your anthropology assignment, but maybe you have multiple steps that are involved in the anthropology assignment, and some of them have to come much sooner than other steps. So you want to kind of, when you're prioritizing the steps themselves in between all your, and you can use a sticky note system here if you want. You can have your page. One way to do it, you have your anthropology page, your psychology page, your economics page, and you have the different steps can be on sticky notes. All right, so you have your sticky notes and you label them. So anthro, read chapter blah blah blah, anthro, read this other chapter, and then it's things like that. And then you can put those sticky notes in kind of a linear order, and it gives you, so that can help you kind of prioritize and keep in mind, so different things. Of course, the due dates and the exam dates are relevant here, but they're not the only thing. How many assignments and exams do you have in a given week? So maybe this week, week 14, is maybe there's not a lot due because maybe everything's due on the last week of classes and then during finals. So that doesn't mean that you get to just not do anything. You can be preparing, right? So look at what's due when, but also how much you have due. Sometimes the biggest excuse I have for students telling me they're late with something in my class, well, I have 3 things due this day. But it's like, if you've known this for 3 weeks, you should have been able to plan for that, okay? If you're training to be an academic or a professional, you need to get used to planning ahead for things, okay? It will make your colleagues someday like you better. All right. What steps do you have to do before this particular step? So maybe you're looking at step, it's like, okay, I need to write an outline, but what do you need to do before you do that outline? Maybe you need to find your sources and read them and take notes on them first, right? So when you're prioritizing, obviously you're not going to put the outline before finding sources. That wouldn't be very helpful, okay? Think too, and this sounds like teacher-centered, but it really is relevant. When is your teacher available for questions? So say if you're planning your week and you do some homework on the weekends and stuff, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be working on this over the weekend. So, but there's something that I might not be clear on, but if needed, I'll ask the teacher a question. But then maybe the thing's due on a Monday and you want to work on it through the weekend, but then maybe, some teachers check their emails and myos on the weekend. Not everybody does. Some of us, for health reasons, have set a boundary that no, our weekends are ours. We we work a lot during the week. We need our weekend. So you can't rely on us being available at your beck and call to answer your questions. So if you think you might have a lot of questions on something and it's due on the Monday, make sure you look at your stuff and the stuff you might have questions on and ask your teacher before the weekend, okay? So that then you'll have the answers that you need when you're working on it over the weekend. So kind of arrange okay, I'm doing this, and you might not. So this is to help break down this idea that you're going to sit down and finish an assignment in one class in like 2 or 3 hours. I know you've done this. Some of you have done it successfully. I've done it a million times. I've been a student. I get it. But really, you will do a lot better in academia if you break things up in a different way and you're putting kinds of tasks together, or splitting things up in a way to give yourself variety in the day. So maybe you're the type of person you like to do all your reading in one day or in a 2-day chunk and then move on to other kinds of things. Great, do that. But if you get bored by that, you need variety, then arrange for maybe 2 hours of reading and then another couple of hours of something else, or you know what I mean? Mix it up, do things how works for you, and that means you're not necessarily spending big chunks of time on any one assignment. So that being said, these steps that you've come up with and you've prioritized across all your different things that are coming up, plug them into your schedule. So say, okay, so Sunday I have all day to work on my school stuff. I'm not working. Well, okay, what things are most rush? Okay, so in a week and a half, I've got these 2 papers due on the same day, and I want to chip away at both of them a little bit. Maybe you'll spend half your day doing steps for one of them and another part of the day doing steps for another. Okay, things like that. And then, get started. It's not enough to create schedule. A lot of us are great at creating lists and schedules, but then starting is hard. I've shared some tips in the past on time management and procrastination. It's a very common struggle, again, not just for students, but for teachers and everybody. It's really hard. So I've already shared some tips. Maybe you can go back and look at some of these videos and stuff. That's good procrastination because maybe you'll be learning some tips on how to do it less. One thing that I find works for me, and it works for a lot of people that I know, is that, there's this thing I don't want to do. I hate reading, whatever. I don't hate reading, but a lot of people do. Tell yourself, you know what? I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes. Or say 5 pages. That's it. And that's, and then I'll do more later. Sometimes you might you do that, and then you might wind up feeling, oh, that was easier than I thought. Well, I can keep going another 5 minutes or another 10 minutes. And the next thing you know, maybe you've done a half hour of reading. Maybe it was more interesting than you thought it would be. So just tell yourself you'll do a little bit. All right. Remember your end goal, right? Always remember, okay, this is a step towards this other thing. And even if it's like a class that's not particularly interesting to you, even just that class, like, okay, this thing that I'm doing right now is a step towards this one thing that I have to do as part of this bigger class, and that class is part of something else that I want to achieve. And reminding yourself of that often can really help in these difficult times when you're super busy and you feel like you're drowning. You know, you have an end goal. And what do you hope to do with that? Remember how you felt in previous times. You know, we've all been there. We've had times when it's like, oh my God, the anxiety, that feeling in the pit of your stomach, right? And you know you're in it, and you're like, oh, if only I would have started this 2 weeks ago. And then, well, remember how that felt, and think, well, what can I do right now to avoid a little bit of that? Right? That can help you sometimes. Okay, I have I'm a bit tired, but I probably have enough energy to read for 15 minutes. If I do that and I take a couple notes, then when I pick up on it to get again tomorrow, I'll remember a little bit of what I read. I won't need to read it over. And just you're setting yourself up. Think of future me, right? Think of your future self, and if you see yourself as a caregiver to future self, that can help. And for writing in particular, getting started on writing, I know that's hard. I'm a writer. It's hard to get started. One trick that I found, there's two. I only put one here, but to start writing gibberish, just start typing at your keyboard. You don't even need to be writing real words. Just blah 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 whatever. Eventually your brain's gonna get bored and you're like, okay, it's gonna start thinking, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here again? Okay, sociology paper. What did I read again? And okay, there are my notes. Okay, then you can just start writing and don't worry about being perfect at first. Just let the ideas flow, knowing that you'll go back, of course, and edit your paper. All right, but that's a whole other topic. But that's just a little tip on getting started, right? Or write about your day, and then when you're done writing about your day, start writing about what you're supposed to be writing about. And that stuff you wrote about your day can go into a blog or a personal journal. So just to end off, some things to remember. There's three main things here. Your teachers are human. Okay, I've shared tips before about communicating with your teachers, and this goes for all the time. But at this time of year in particular, we get a lot of Mayos. Students forget that they're essentially Mayo is like an email, right? And people forget because they're on their phones and they're writing as though they were texting their buddies with all the abbreviations and the hey and the demands and the lack of signature and the no greeting. Like, I know it feels time consuming, but it really helps facilitate professional relations when you take the time to go, hi Jackie, or hi Dr. So-and-so, I hope you're well, I was wondering blah 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 blah. Okay, so courteous, be compassionate, also acknowledge, recognize that we're also under a lot of time pressure and a lot of stress, so making demands on us, sending us 10 Mayos in a day with a bunch of follow-up questions. If you have follow-up questions at some point, just make an appointment. Try to make an appointment, because just the back and forth Mayos get really exhausting to us, because we're like, what the hell? Don't expect immediate responses. Sometimes I get students who write to me and on a Saturday morning, and then maybe I happen to be on, or I saw it, but I'm like, oh, I haven't had coffee yet, I'll look at this later. Or or maybe I didn't even get to it. Then the Sunday I see like a series of emails from the same students. Well, I wrote to you Saturday morning, I didn't get a response, blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, we're not online 24/7, okay? Don't assume we'll bend over backwards to accommodate you when you're disorganized or at the last minute. I see part of my job is helping you become organized and helping you be professional. But at the same time, if I've spent the semester giving you tips, giving you advice, and you don't follow it, and at the last minute you've screwed yourself over, well, it's not necessarily my job to bend over backwards to fix your problems. I try to be compassionate too, but even your most compassionate teachers, we have our limits, and we're allowed to have those boundaries. When we do you favors, like extensions or anything else, we're actually giving ourselves extra work, because when we have a batch of papers, there's a process we go through. There's we're in it, we're in this one thing. Then if 2 weeks later I have to mark a paper from that batch, I've moved on to other things. I have to switch gears. It's time consuming, it's energy consuming. So remember that every time you ask your teacher a favor, we're giving ourselves extra work when we say yes, and we're also burnt out. So as you know, I'm quite generous with favors, extensions, things like that, but please don't be excessive in your requests. If you've been asking extensions all semester from me, at this point in the semester, maybe ask your other teachers, just don't pile it on. If you do need a favor, please ask nicely. You don't need to grovel and beg, but just be a grown up and show some respect and understand that we're not under an obligation. Don't ever tell a teacher, look, I can't do this on time, you need to give me extra time. No, we don't actually. We're allowed to have our boundaries that we set out in our assignment policies. And when you do have questions about an assignment, please be clear in your questions. I get so many modules where I don't even know what the student is saying, and I'm not talking about language barriers here. I'm talking about students not clarifying. They'll just say things like, I don't understand what I need to do. And I'm like, well, about what, right? Be clear, be specific, show that you've read the instructions. There's nothing more insulting when we spend time putting together instructions with all the details that you need and have a student just, I didn't read it, I just want you to tell me what to do. Well, actually, I already did. So go read the instructions. Tell me specifically what you don't understand. It's okay to not understand and ask for clarification, but tell me what exactly. So a lot of this happens the night before some things due. Again, I get it, but then, don't expect an immediate response, and at that point, you can't necessarily expect one at all. All that said, with that out of the way, and I feel bad having to remind students of this, but even my nicest students sometimes at the end of the semester forget because you're stressed. So try to keep that in mind despite your own stress. You're capable. Learning mistakes are learning opportunities. I know it's cliche, but it really is true. So go back to previous work in a course to see where you went wrong if you don't want to lose points again for the same mistakes. And I'm not just talking about spelling and grammar here. If in every paper you got back you're told this is unclear, this lacks detail, things like that, well then find out how you can do better, right? And do better if you want to, of course. If you're not sure, like I say, ask. Jackie, how can I write things that are clearer? You keep saying this is unclear. Well, what can I do? Remember what you've already achieved. Don't let yourself get bogged down too much thinking only about the negative things. I know it's hard, trust me, but it's really important to look at, okay, well, I've done this. Okay? Capable doesn't mean invincible, though. So yes, you're all capable, but working 12 hours might seem like a good idea, but trust me, I read your essays, and I know that after a few hours, I can tell when somebody they tried to do an overnight on an essay, and it starts good, and then it just loses coherence. I've done this too. I've been a student, and we feel like we're brilliant when we're on caffeine. High on caffeine at 3 in the morning. It looks brilliant. Chances are, I'm sorry, it's gibberish. Most of us are too polite to actually call it gibberish. We use other terms, like, that was unclear. But that's how our brains work. We're not meant to work for those kinds of stretches. So give yourself breaks. If you fall off the train, again, this is kind of, you're not invincible, you're not perfect. If you're just starting to try to be organized in your life, you're still gonna mess up. That's normal. I've been organized for a while, but I still fall off the train sometimes. Don't let yourself get paralyzed by the spiral of guilt and low self-worth, which leads you to just not do anything at all. Again, I know it's hard, especially if you're dealing with depression and anxiety, but, here's some little things you can do. You can acknowledge, oh, well, I fell off the train, and maybe have a little, okay, well, I'm just a human being, so that happens. Happens to everybody. Just pat yourself on the back, figure out, okay, what happened? Maybe did I try to do a 12-hour thing again? Did I forget to drink water? Did I, am I getting ahead of myself and not looking at my instructions, and so that I'm going all over the place, and, Well, what happened essentially? Try to do some course correction. Okay, so I haven't been sleeping, I've been trying to pull overnighters. Okay, what can I do to make sure that I get some rest before I move on? And then try again, you know? Take care of your body. Again, I know cliche, you hear it from everybody, but it makes such a difference. You know, sleep, figure out, are you, you know, an 8 hour a night person, or would you rather sleep 6 hours in one shot and then have naps, power naps, whatever? Find out what works for you. Eat nutritious things, but I'm not like a big health nut here, but you know, you can have some treats too. It's good for your, you know, psychologically it can be good, whatever that means for you. For me, it's Cheez-Its. Okay, stay hydrated. Some coffee's okay. I drink coffee. I'm a coffee addict, but it's really important to drink water too. It sounds tacky, but trust me, you'll feel better. Move around a bit, stretch, walk around the block. If mobility is limited for whatever reason, there's stretches you can do in your chair. Look it up on YouTube. And finally, remember you're not alone. So having study buddies can really be helpful. I've shared some tips on this in the past. There's like the FocusMate platform. You can connect with other students and just be accountable to each other and be on video call with each other, and you're both working, you take little chat breaks. That can be really good for your morale and help you feel that you're not alone. So that's it. I know this was a 25-minute thing, and I'm suggesting that you take more time where you're not actively, well, you are working, and getting yourself organized is part of it, and I think it will save you time and stress in the longer term. If you have questions about any of this, I'm really happy to talk about this kind of stuff, so don't be shy.